streaming is on.
I believe it's on.
Yeah.
What makes you think that? All right. Welcome. It's a brand spanking new year. Happy New Year, all. It's the January meeting of the Western North Carolina Linux Users Group out of Asheville, North Carolina, and environs. So I don't think we had anything specific planned for today. Correct me if I'm wrong, anybody. But I think we'll just go around the room and start with Dan.
Okay. Well, as far as Linux goes, I really don't have anything per se. But I would like to make an announcement. I did post a dear friend of mine, Fred Hansen, who's Electric Pilgrim in our group. He'd been a group member for a couple of months, and he passed on Christmas Day. He died after a short illness. So he's actually still in Pardee Hospital, I understand now, in the morgue, still in cold storage, waiting for cremation instructions. So, but he was 77, and the guy was really a prolific writer. He was my mentor. I've followed him for years. I've known him had known him for 25 years or more. And I hated to really see him go. It was hard. I went to visit him before he passed, but he's in a better place now. So anyway, I wanted to announce that. And other than that, I have a new computer system. I've got a 1-year-old System 76 Athelio machine, which is an upgrade from what I had at a Dell. And it's got a Ryzen 5 AMD processor in it, 16 gigs of RAM. And it just it's got an M.2 hard drive. The thing just flies. I click on something and it's there before I even realize it. So got that, and a Brother laser printer, and a 4K monitor. So kind of an upgrade from what I had. I'm still using my hearing aids to talk on and to listen and to answer the phone and take calls and hang up on people. But and it works fine. Didn't have to make any adjustments whatsoever. It's almost as if I had the same machine, but I don't. And I've got the same webcam, but anyway.
It looks like Santa was pretty good to you, Dan.
Yeah. Hey, Gene. Anyway, can't think of anything else really, to be honest, that I wanted to talk about today. I missed last month. I'm sorry about that, but I woke up and didn't feel well, so I didn't feel like coming to the group, and didn't want to be a Debbie Downer. So anyway, I'll just pass the baton on to somebody else. That's about all I got, Brent.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, congrats on the new system, and sorry about your loss.
Thank you.
With the median age of our group being a bit on the high side, that is a persistent fear I have of finding out that folks have departed or are not doing well.
Yeah, he was 7 years my senior, so I'm 70, so I'm getting up there myself.
All right, thanks again, and let's talk to Alan. You are muted, Alan.
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot to report either. I use my computer throughout the day, and but nothing remarkable to report in terms of Linux. Although I am considering buying a Raspberry Pi with a Model 5 with 8 gigs of memory, and so I can do testing of various applications but that's basically it.
Yeah, I have to think, it sounds like Linux has gotten too reliable and boring as of late. And we need more folks like Steve, who cause themselves a lot of problems trying to do things. in a slightly askew way to create interesting things to talk about. Because a system that just works, I mean, it's great, and it's great that Linux has gotten there, but again, it's kind of boring.
I'd like to make a comment to Alan about his Raspberry Pi venture. I've got two Raspberry Pis, Alan. I've got the Model 3B Plus and the Model 4 gig RAM model. And both of those things have been, I mean, persistent. They just click right along, don't have to worry about them. And I'm doing Docker container environment and stuff like that on them, where I can touch the application via the web, and I love it. So you'll love the 8 gig model, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. They're still kind of hard to find, but I found some vendors in the UK that have them in stock and will ship to the US.
Right. That's probably where you're going to go get it.
All right, thanks, Alan.
Let me mention one other thing one of the things that I've been researching is low-raw WAN. That's that long range, the low power radio devices that you can network, and considering buying some low-raw cards and testing that out. The bandwidth is fairly limited, but I don't really need a whole lot of bandwidth. I'm just want to communicate short bursts of small data files, and so what I'm looking at here is we're still considering purchasing a trail monitoring, a trail counter system to monitor traffic on various hiking trails. But the system we've been looking at uses SD memory cards, which means you got to go out there and retrieve the cards and replace them and download the data. But what I'm looking at is creating that same system using this low-raw WAN to communicate the data back to a server that we have nearby. And looking forward to giving that a try.
Yeah,
So
I'm sorry, Brent. Go ahead.
that system, what kind of ranges are we talking about? And is that like a unidirectional antenna, sort of like where you point a Yagi to something, or is it just like does it go in all directions?
You can use omnidirectional antenna, or I suppose you could use a Yagi. It operates on in the 900 megahertz band. So it should cut through trees and foliage and even some minor hills. The ranges that the low-raw .org or whatever the name of their industry organization, people report various performances and distances anywhere from a kilometer up to 5 or 6 kilometers, which is more than enough for us. And the other thing, what I'm interested in, I would love it if I could transmit images, try to lower resolution, try to keep the images as small as possible. And what it does, it will communicate a packet, and then it communicates the next packet until you build the image. But right now, I just what I'm thinking about doing is using proximity sensors, like either infrared or ultrasound technologies to detect motion, and the issue is, how do you differentiate an animal like a deer or a bear from a human? So there's going to be, but it should provide a relative number of detections, so we can compare different trails.
So is that something that you have TCP/IP running over? And is it like a point to point, or is it like, can there be multiple nodes on like a shared network?
You can have many nodes. The LoRa was designed for the Internet of Things, and it's built for like sensors, for like weather data or any kind of data generated by a sensor. And you can have thousands of different nodes on that device. And anyway, I suggest, if you want to look into it, it's pretty interesting, is go to that LoRa to their website, and it explains the technology and its limitations, as well as what it's capable of.
Well, Alan, I think you answered my question, but I was going to ask you if you were going to use IoT devices and access the RFID network rather than using radio frequency. Using what you're doing, but it sounds like they've incorporated that into it.
Well, the technologies, you could use just IP networking, like wide area networks. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is we don't have access to power. These are remote sensors.
That's what I thought.
And the other thing is some of these devices use Bluetooth. Mm-hmm. But again, Bluetooth is limited in range because we got to communicate back to our server.
Yeah, it's only like 30 feet.
Yeah, but the LoRa technology, it's proven, it does work. It's very inexpensive. Each of these nodes, you can build a LoRa node for probably less than $30.
Yeah. And I was thinking if you had powered sensors, you could use a satellite network.
Yeah, the other route to go would be go with a GSM, a smart, a cellular technology.
Yep.
But that again depends upon the availability of a cell phone service at the location, and it also is more costly.
Yeah.
Both for the device and for the service. The LoRa is free. It uses just public domain frequencies. Anyway, it's cool. I will report back on if I can get this thing to work and what kind of range that we can get. The good news, it's in a very quiet radio environment, which less noise equals greater range and greater throughput.
Hey, Alan.
Yeah.
I believe Ed Comer was working with that on his Beehive weighing system. I don't know if he ever, got it working or not, but you might want to check with him.
All right, thank you. That's a perfect application. Where if you're 500 feet or 1,000 feet, and that should work great.
All right. Thanks again, Alan and Dan and everyone else. Let's talk to Ross. You're still muted, Ross.
Still muted? Let's see. How about that? Can you hear me now?
Yep,
no?
You're good.
So,
you're good.
Okay. Well, I'm a Linux enthusiast for a long time, but I lack much knowledge about it. I started with some old ThinkPads, an X200 and a T400. And I still have those, I'm currently using a System 76 laptop, running a Pop OS. And I stumble along, so I'm looking forward to leaning on you guys for answering all these crazy questions I have. One of which, for example, is this business about sudo and whether or not I should be in the sudoers group. I'm very much interested in maintaining security. For instance, when I do banking, I have a different user. I never do banking on my regular user. And for fear of someone hacking into my regular user and then installing some sort of man-in-the-middle attack. So, but I'm not sure that really gets me anything by creating a whole different user just to do banking on, and that if someone were to hack into any account that I have where I'm in the sudoers group, they could just elevate privileges and be able to crawl around in my computer at will. So those are the kind of questions that I think about before I go to sleep. I have a router, which I think is a really important place to provide the kind of protections that we all like to have. To that end, I've got one of these PepLink or PepWave Surf Soho, and there's a guy named Michael Horowitz, not the attorney, but this is a retired IBM fellow who has a web page called routersecurity.org. He's got another web page called Defensive Computing, but this router security page, routersecurity.org, he illuminates a lot of these kinds of vulnerabilities that routers have. And so for my computer interests, that's kind of where I focus.
Well, if you don't mind, I probably have some input for some of those issues. When it comes to router security, for me, it's all about not doing anything too off the beaten path. I have my standard ISP router back there. It doesn't really present much of a face to the internet. I certainly would never turn on any sort of remote management or really anything that provides a way in. My network is purely outbound. So if someone were to scan my IP, which in my case isn't actually mine, it's not assigned directly to that. There's some sort of address translation going on in my ISP such that there may be a many-to-one association. I don't even actually know. But if someone were to scan my IP, they're not going to find anything to attack. And I think that's generally the way to go. And beyond that, it's just a matter of, if you know what you have and you keep apprised of vulnerabilities that are out there and keep your firmware up to date. The router is kind of one of the last things I think about from my network security. It's good to think about it, but it's not where they're going to get me. In all honesty, the way you're doing banking, it sounds like a great idea to limit that to a specific user. But like you said, if they get the keys to the kingdom, they can man in middle all they want, right? If they have root access to your box, then you don't know you can't trust what you see on your machine, because root is root. It is the ultimate authority on everything. That being said, it would be extraordinarily inconvenient to have your daily driver not have a method for elevated access. I have not always done sudo. I can't call it sudo or sudo for reasons. But it's the way I learned it was sudo. So I have some machines where I do use it, and I have some machines where I don't. It is more convenient to have it and then have just a single password that you enter. It is certainly a layer of protection, even if you can sudo as root. It's better that a password has to be supplied to do that, because the user something may be able to work as your account. They've compromised you, but that doesn't mean they know your password and have a means to enter it. So that's a layer of protection for sure. But yes, it's probably even better yet to require to do something as root, to su to root, enter that password, and then do the jobs that way. I would say that is certainly yet a layer of security more than that. So I have, you give a little bit up with sudo, but I think for most users, it's worth it. Obviously, there's a lot of ways to protect yourself even further. You could do all your banking from a virtual machine or some sort of isolated container where you completely trust the environment. You can maybe you can bring it up from an image that is never changed. It's always fresh every time. You pull whatever data off of it, and then you destroy it, and you bring up the clean image. There, if you want to be truly paranoid, if you're dealing with data that you feel needs an extra special layer of protection, there's a lot of strategies for ensuring that you're starting from a known good environment.
Okay.
Now, Ross, I'd like to say something if I could. If you're really concerned about security, one of the best operating systems for especially for banking and that kind of thing would be Qubes OS. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but QUBES. It's a virtualization, just like Brent was alluding to. So what you could do is you have a banking cube that you bring up, totally isolated from anything, and the only thing, it connects to the internet. You do what you need to do, and then it's destroyed, so you don't have to worry about it. But I don't know what kind of router you have. I've got an Asus Black Knight, and as long as I keep the firmware up to date and all the other things up to date, it's a very good security tool for the internet, I think, and personally. But one of the other things I wanted to mention to you, and this is just something that you can take or leave, and that is, and I've taken it, and I'll tell you why. Many years, people have been using sudo or sudo, and they've known over the years, because it's so large a program, it's a very big target, big vector for hacking. And so it's been replaced. In fact, some distros of Linux will tell you, don't use sudo, use this. What I'm using is something I installed called doas. It's a very small, it's called doas, DOAS. Okay, and it replaces sudo. It's very small. It's not a big target vector like sudo is. And it won't do everything that sudo does, but for the most part, people don't do anything with sudo other than use it to log in. I mean, it can do a bunch of other stuff, and that's why it's so big. But doas, that's all it's used for, is for elevating privileges, and that's it. If you want me to send you some instructions on that, you're using Pop! OS, is that right?
I am.
So it's a Ubuntu-based operating system. It should be I think it's a simple thing of just saying sudo apt install while you've got sudo apt install doas. I think that's all you need to do.
All right.
And then don't remove sudo though. That's the key.
Okay.
And you don't remove it. Now you can take it out of your, you can tell it not to, there's a way to do this, and I'd have to explain it to you. But you can not have it come up, but you don't want to go into the system and remove it, like try to remove sudo, because if you do, you're going to be in trouble because your system is got a lot of fingers pointing to connected to sudo. And but doas is what I use, and that's very effective, and it is much more secure than sudo is.
Okay, and Cubes is that something that you run in a virtual machine, or?
It's installed on your desktop just like any other operating system, except it uses virtualization as its methodology for different groups. Okay, the individual who created Cubes is Polish, and I can't remember her name. It escapes me at the moment. But there's a website I can send you. Do you have an email address you're going to share with me, or?
I do. It's E is in Echo, P is in Papa, I is in. I'll wait for you.
Yeah, let me write it down. So go ahead.
E is in Echo.
Good man.
Charlie Hotel.
I have Proton Mail.
When you publish this video as public, could you make sure to munge that in some way so it's not
Yep.
usable?
Yeah, I'll have to edit this video because we don't want people knowing that. Okay, thank you. I'll send you some information on Cubes and on Duaz.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Anything else from you, Ross?
Oh, well, that's, I think that's a good snapshot of my Linux hobby. We don't talk about other hobbies here on this, I assume, so.
For sure.
Don't want to bore you with mathematics and whatnot. So.
Won't bore me. Got my degree in mathematics.
Well, we certainly welcome talk about all sorts of other things here because sometimes we don't have as much to talk about and we go off on any number of tangents, and I think math would be one of those that is welcomed. I mean, you may get a lot of blank stares, like from me.
I do the math problem of the month, Ross. So
and, I got a ham radio license when I retired, but I haven't ever purchased a radio and done anything with it. I just thought it'd be one of those kind of hobbies I'd embark on. I might yet do that. I'm in Hendersonville, and I happen to be between Davis Mountain and Long John Mountain, with a bunch of trees around me. So I would be kind of limited in that regard. But one of the things that is popular, I understand, in ham radio is using digital communications, and so there is a software-defined radio that you can get on a little USB stick for, I don't know, $50, $150, and plug that into your computer, and then the software is, of course, in Linux is free. So you have the capability of getting a $4,000 or $5,000 radio, I understand, for not a lot of money. You still have to put some money in an antenna, but that's a whole nother field. So you can spend as much or as little there, but anyway, so maybe in the future I'll do that, and if there are ham radio enthusiasts among the group, I can lean on those guys too.
While I am not one of them, I can safely say that you will find several.
Mm-hmm.
Ross, I became a ham. I got my my license about 1.5 years ago, and I bought. Somebody actually gave me the first one. I got somebody gave me a Baofeng Chinese radio. You can buy these radios for $25, $30, and they're amazing what they do. And but the key is the antenna.
Right.
You got it. You want to get a good antenna, and I ended up building what's called a J pole. I made it out of copper tubing. It was inexpensive, and this thing, a little 4-watt Baofeng, puts out a signal, and you connect to a repeater. So, I mean, I've talked to people in 3 or 4 different states, and it's a lot of fun. And these radios are very, very useful.
Uh-huh. Okay.
How about
Frequency.
the rest of the world there, Alan? You talk to anybody like in Africa or Middle East?
No, that's on high frequency. I'm a technician class license, which is the beginning license that you can get,
Okay.
and that's limited. I'm mainly operate on 2 meters, and I think it's like 470 centimeter bands. For the longer range stuff, you need a general class or an expert class license, and but that if you study the manual, you can take the test and you can buy high frequency radios and build or buy an antenna, and you can talk to all around the world.
Oh yeah.
You get a dual band Yagi, you can talk to, you can bounce off the ISS or one of the satellites that goes over, and you can get quite a distance on those.
I bet you
And
can.
that's completely illegal. That's what those are up there for. So yeah, even with a technician license, granted you're limited to time of day when it's passing overhead, and that with a 5-watt handheld and a dual band Yagi antenna, you can track it. And I mean, I've talked to Canada, down in Mexico, just with that, with no HF. So
Wow.
Well, thanks again, Ross. Was that it for you?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thanks so much. Larry, what do you have going on?
My Linux is, like everybody else, is working pretty well, it seems like. I haven't been trying to do anything fancy. So just on a side issue, haven't heard anybody say anything about COVID, but some of my relatives, like, just heard my sister has COVID. I saw her before Christmas, and didn't know if it was going around, and some other relatives that I was going to go see in Georgia after Christmas also seem to have COVID. So haven't been down there. I'm still hoping to get down there soon. But you hear a lot about COVID and RSV and flu in the news. So I just wondered what other people, if anybody in this group is having friends, relatives, whatever.
Larry, not so much COVID in my case, but I've had the flu, and almost everybody I know has had it. So maybe I'm hanging around with the wrong crowd. I don't know.
Larry, I right before Thanksgiving, my wife and I both, I've had two vaccinations and 3 boosters, and we both got COVID. So,
Really?
Yep.
I'm kind of
we weren't hospitalized or anything, but
I'm kind of thinking maybe it's the holidays like Thanksgiving and Christmas might be good times to stay home by yourself, not go visit people.
I definitely I think there was a lull there, but right after Thanksgiving is where I heard a lot of folks saying, "Oh, I have COVID. Like my neighbors across the street got it right after having house guests for Thanksgiving, and I think Thanksgiving this year was a super spreader event, but it seemed to be all mild. I didn't personally. I'm sure there's some folks out there that suffered, unfortunately, but pretty much every case I heard of directly, it was just a very mild, what I think they call it nasal COVID, where it, basically stays in your upper respiratory.
That's what
There were a
people
lot of
think.
people wearing masks up in Vermont, I noticed, and I guess they're having some kind of resurgence up there.
We have got a ton of people out at work with it right now. So it's, yeah, and if you look at the wastewater data that's still available, this is looking to be one of the highest peaks of the whole thing. So it's really out there. But yeah, like Britt was saying, I don't think it's that bad. All the cases I heard of have been more annoying than deathly sickening. So
Well, that's what the vaccines were for, isn't it?
yeah.
To keep you from ending up in the hospital.
Right.
Yeah, I think everyone has either gotten vaccinated or gotten it, some level of it by now. So I think between that and just it mutating to something very different than what it was, in 2020, which not to say it won't change again to something worse, but I think it's knock on wood, never going to be the problem it was. Now it's just one of those yearly things we have to deal with.
Well, that's it for me for right now.
I hate talking about medical stuff on this, call when I know there's folks on here who know a lot more than I do.
He's not here right now.
Rusty's here.
Yeah. Of all the times for Steve not to be here, though.
That's what I was going to say. Where's Steve?
All right. Thanks, Larry. Gene, hopefully we'll hold on to you long enough to hear from you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mine's been winking in and out. I don't. I'm just update. I try to update everything right before Linux group, but evidently there's a ripple in the force somehow. Couple of things that I have been thinking about. One of them is the demise of cookies, and there again, brighter minds than mine will have to speak to that and to what cookies are going to morph into. I'm sure there will still be something out there for tracking and keeping hold of the people who look at your ads. But I was playing around. I'm trying to give a desktop computer to my kid, and I was trying to upfit it with what he wanted to use, and in his case, it's Windows. So I got this old Dell desktop and took all my Linux stuff off of it and got ready to put Windows on it. And the first catastrophe I had was trying to get something to boot. A while back, Dave had sent out a disk with supposedly with Windows 10 on it, and you can get, I think, I've heard that you can get it from the Windows website. So I went to there, downloaded whatever they had, put it in on a USB stick, and I had a heck of a time getting it to boot, but finally I did. And then I started the install, and it didn't like. First of all, I was trying to use GPT to format the disk, and it didn't like that. I guess Windows 10 was pre-GPT or whatever. I don't know. Anyway, so I went back and redid it with MBR or MSDOS or whatever the partitioning is that Microsoft uses, And so I got a little further down the road, but then I got to a point and it said, cannot use this disk. So there was the only clue I had was that there may have been something in the system board controller. So I got back into the BIOS of the computer, and sure enough, I had selected. It had 3 levels of RAID, an ACHI, an ACP, or an ACT or something, and then just regular RAID. And I had selected the other one, so I reselected that one, went back, and this time it did install finally. So if you've been hearing, I don't know, Brent, if you can hear me over the hollow there, but I've been cursing Windows roundly for the last several days, and finally got this thing. And all this, in aid of doing something for my kid, but no good deed goes unpunished in this world. So anyway, finally got it on there, and so he's going to be the proud owner of a Windows machine specially designed for him. So, but back to the cookie thing, it got me thinking about the purpose of the internet. Going back to why it was invented, and I guess if you ask Google, Google would say the internet was invented so that we could sell you stuff. My philosophy has always been the internet was invented so that people have access to information. And it seems like that side has run off. The monetizing of the internet has run off to the buck the traces, or whatever they used to call it when the horses bolted on you. Buck the traces and gone all sales all the time. And I just wondered there again, these are appealing to brighter minds than mine about what you guys feel about all that stuff. So anyway, I'll let you run with that if you can.
Well, Gene, the internet was not the internet per se, but that networking communication was originally designed so that universities could share documents with each other. But that's about it. That's where it got started.
Well,
the military got its hands
too,
on it.
I know it wasn't just EDUs, but the military wanted a way to communicate that was secure and fun.
That was after the universities.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know my history enough, so.
Yeah.
But that doesn't include an ad statement or a mission statement, entailing that everybody be assaulted with advertising and sales pitches.
Well, ads ruined the radio, they ruined television, and now they're ruining the internet. So.
Speak of the devil, look who's here.
Hi.
Did he show up?
Yeah.
Right.
Steve-O.
I recognize his finger.
Yeah. And can you see me?
Steve-O one Knievo.
Yeah.
I think the alarms went off. Like he got the bat signal that someone was talking about COVID.
Oh yeah, that was good. That was good.
And he had to.
The bat signal.
I'm going to shut my camera off.
Where's your camera? Where you got that thing installed?
I have one of those in my laptop. It's a terrible angle. I don't know why anyone thought that was a good idea. It does, I guess, allow for the screen to be smaller.
Yeah, I imagine so.
I mean, the bezel to be smaller.
Steve, we were just talking about COVID and the flu and all that, and we said we have a resident expert. Where is he?
Well, the resident expert is recovering from influenza.
Oh, okay.
OSV.
Physician heal thyself.
Well, actually, that's the way it works. The body is called upon to heal itself. And it seems to be doing it. I had one minor glitch when my sodium went down, and they told me this in the ER. But other than that, when I stopped my diuretic, it seems to have come back to normal, and so I'm relatively happy about that.
You ended up in the ER?
Well, just I had one particular bad. It's a combination of low sodium, which makes you kind of weak and unstable and can do various crazy things, and influenza. And I didn't know what was going on, and I didn't know that my sodium had dropped, and so we felt it was a good idea the next morning to go in, and they routinely checked the chemistries and said, your sodium is very low. And he said, do you want to be admitted, or would you like to try going home? So I said, how about home? Home worked better.
You didn't want COVID.
No, one at a time. Combo infections are no joy.
Well, Dan has said that he and his wife both got COVID somehow. And Larry's family has all been sick, and I've been sick, and everybody I know has been sick. So,
Well, Steve,
Yeah.
good news. Steve, good news is I got my A1C down from 6.2 to 5.8.
That's terrific. Pretty soon you'll get it down low enough, they'll say you're not diabetic. You don't have to do anything.
Yeah, I was pre-diabetic there for a while, and
Yeah,
I'm
well,
not.
if
I'm
if
not
you-
heavy. I mean, you know.
If you are pre-diabetic till you say are 100, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Then you're entitled to whatever you want. You can either drop dead or get diabetes or do whatever.
Exactly. Go out in a diabetic coma.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm impressed. I was looking up, lifestyle, and these Indians that still exist, the primitive tribes that still exist. They've got one studied in Bolivia, and they said that their cardiovascular fitness of their 80-year-olds is better than 50-year-olds in the U.S.
I believe that.
And that they generally do without our medicines. I don't understand how they can possibly do that without our medicines.
Yep.
I am one of those who is very much geriatrically oriented because I'm an old doctor. And
Yeah.
to me, the idea is as you get older, you should make sure you keep dropping medicines off. Don't add or increase them. But
well,
that,
for those
after all-
Bolivians, those coca leaves are magic, you know.
well, I think they're magic for everybody. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. It was bad enough that we had to cancel. We were going to go on vacation to New York at this time, and so we blew that away, which is unfortunate. But better to be, as they say, safe than sorry.
So
Yeah.
So Steve, anything else since we've been talking to you? Anything going on in the Linux world or otherwise with you this month?
Well, let's see. I think last time we had some kind of discussion. I guess what I'm interested in Linux is the reason I call myself a perennial newbie is because I don't look into the source code. That's primarily it. And so when I run into, and I haven't memorized all the all the mans for all the different mans around. So since I'm ignorant about all that stuff, when a problem comes up, I sit there and I go, and I try to go online and see if someone can have the same problem, and solved it. And sometimes, yep, it's just that simple. There's a bug and you have to know it, and you can fix it by X, Y, and Z. So, I mean, I'm rambling, but I'm old and I'm sick, so please let me finish my ramble and then I'll be finished talking. And I wonder if how many of you have had the patience when you get not an error message or something that doesn't work, but when you launch your computer in the morning and it gives you a warning about this and a warning about that, that you track that down and make sure you fix whatever is leading to that warning, so it doesn't interfere with the speed of your boot or the purity of the boot. And I guess that's about it.
Now, there's one warning you don't want to ignore, Steve, and that's your smart monitor, which I did. And then guess what? My SSD totally crashed. I lost the entire operating system, but I had a backup.
What did the smart monitor tell you?
It said that it basically told me that I had an imminent failure of my hard drive,
And
which was not a spinning drive. It was an SSD.
yeah, what is that, a heat death or what?
It's what?
Is that because of heat or
No, it's because of age. It was going on 3 years.
wow, to think that electronics, because I always heard that they usually die early or they last a long time.
Well, but
Used to be.
SSDs are different than spinning hard drives.
Yeah.
You
What
can
is
only
it?
write to them X number of times and read from them X number of times.
You can't
Reads-
rejuvenate them?
Reads don't cause wear, but writes do. Yeah.
Writes,
And
yeah.
the cells, if you're really paranoid, you could do something called over provisioning, where you say buy a terabyte drive and then only partition off like 750 gigs of it, so it's got a 250 gig buffer to play with. I've only worn, I do a lot of abuse of drives, and I've only worn out one SSD, and it was a very early 128 gig one. And I mean, I flat out worn it out. The problem with SSDs versus hard drives, sorry, Dan, I didn't mean to jump, but SSDs work till they don't. Like, they usually don't give you a lot of outward
Yeah.
a warning that they're going to fail. It's just, doesn't work anymore. Whereas hard drives will usually, especially smart monitoring, will usually, like, you'll start seeing bad sectors, or it'll sound like a washing machine with a brick in it or something like that.
Yeah.
So SSDs can be more reliable, but it's one of those things you're not going to get a warning before it goes. It's just going to not work one day.
What happened to me with my SSD was this. I noticed that I would be typing along and all of a sudden it would like freeze, and I'd be typing and then it would catch up, and it was doing that more and more often. And then I got the smart monitor thing that popped up and said, your SSD is imminently failed. And that was it. I mean,
Yep.
within a matter of minutes, it was gone.
I've got smart mon tools on my file server and stuff in my local machine, and it can tell you how many terabytes are written to your drive. That's the big thing about buying the higher end SSDs, is they are usually not only faster, but use a better brand of flash memory and can take more abuse before they fail.
Leander, do you recommend trim or not trim?
I think everything's trimmed by default these days. I just run with that. I part of why I've been experimenting with B3FS is because of the compression, and that cuts down, especially with modern CPUs being so fast. You can basically get Z standard compression for free. Because if you compress the data when it comes out of RAM before it gets to the SSD, that's less data getting written to the SSD, right? So
Right.
that's been something I've been experimenting with to kind of limit wear, and I think that's part of what the Fedora guys, why they went to B3FS too. But trim, I think, is a good idea. Over provisioning is a good idea if you're really paranoid. Buy about twice the SSD as you think you need, and then kind of because the SSD is pretty smart. It's got a little computer in it, and it will monitor the cells and move them around to wear level. Kind of like your tires, you keep it's like looking at your tires. You're like, oh, it's wearing a little bit more in the middle. We'll let some air out of it, or it's wearing more on the edges. We need to put some more air in it. It's got a little controller in it that does that, where it'll say, oh, these cells here are being used a lot. Let's use these over here. So these days, I mean, a 2 terabyte SSD is like what, under $100. So, and that's a lot. So,
But
one of
still,
my black.
3 years or less than 3 years, Dan. I don't know what you said. 3
That's
years.
3 years. It was about 3 years old.
That doesn't seem like
Is
effective
Yeah.
use.
Well,
It's
it was a Kingston.
Those are cheapies. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a Kingston. I've got a Crucial in now, but
Were you
I would-
writing excessively to the drive, or was it just fairly standard?
no,
Desktop
I
deck.
was because I was using an rsync. I was setting up a package for rsync that was actually taking a snapshot of my entire hard drive about every hour. So
Hmm.
I was using a lot of writes.
You have a
Leander,
cat,
who's
Rusty?
your
I have a cat.
coworker there?
Yeah, I have a cat that wants attention. He tries to.
Yeah,
on my
I
lap.
can see that.
Yeah. He's. But yeah, that sounds like a defective drive. But Kingston are kind of. Ironically, their pen drives used to be pretty good, but their SSDs. I use their SSDs in like old cheap machines that I just need like a $20 SSD for like vintage computers, I guess you would call them. But yeah, Crucial is my go-to these days. Samsung's had some issues with their firmware, killing drives. In fact, over Black Friday, this is a external Crucial 4 terabytes for like $150 for like a portable. For media backup and stuff on the road. But I like those. And Crucial's got an outstanding warranty. I've had a Samsung and a Crucial die on me under warranty due to defective manufacturing or whatever. And the Crucial warranty process was painless. The Samsung was kind of sketchy, so that kind of pushed me towards Crucial more too.
Yeah, I've got a 1 terabyte Crucial in this system now, and it's only about a month old, less than a month old.
The other one I like is Western Digital. Sorry, go ahead.
I have a question, Rusty, here. Am I being heard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Could I get some elaboration on the name of the specific programs that are monitoring an SSD? I've put an SSD in a Windows machine, which I reserve for doing some graphical things with LiDAR point clouds. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's a mistake, because when you reprocess a LiDAR cloud and you keep doing some of these reprocessing commands, I picture a wave of calculation that's going to alter a large number of bits. It's wonderful to have the machine boot up quickly, and I can see that if it's drawing on certain libraries to carry out commands, I can see where it's nice to be able to read quickly, to do repeat calculations that are dependent upon libraries. But I'm wondering, am I shooting myself in the foot by having an SSD in a machine that is whole purpose is to recalculate blocks of data, which I guess when you're cruising the internet, you're surfing the internet, you're probably not doing a large block of data reconfigured, just to pull down a web page or, something simple like that, or you're doing word processing. The data isn't really changing at a very fast rate anywhere. So I'd like some thoughts on that. Should I maybe, getting to Leander's comment, is there a published way to segregate the writing activity to to what appears to be a partition that is reserved for that you're going to sacrificially burn out earlier? How can you configure the calculation activity to really restrict writing and recalculations to a certain partition?
Hey, Rusty, you ask about packages for monitoring your SSDs.
Yes.
I'm running MX Linux, and there are two in the MX tools that I use. One's called G Smart Control, and the other one's called Smart Status. And those are the two. Those are the ones that told me that I had an SSD problem in my previous SSD.
I use SmartMon tools, which I don't know if those programs are part of that package, but they're in most distributions. And you can use Smart CTL and Smart D, and you can configure it to send you an email when one starts failing. And I also posted a link in chat to over provisioning a drive with HD Parm and Linux to set it up to where you can do that. I wouldn't worry about it too much on modern drives. I mean, the drive I had fail ran for 10 years, and it was running my weather station, so I was getting written to every minute on the minute when data was getting pulled to it. So it still took it 10 years to fail, and it was doing other things too. The time I've really become cautious with this is I've got a Mac now I've got a Mac or two that's got the soldered on SSD that you cannot replace. And so I've become more careful. That's why I bought this, is so when I'm on the road and I'm using my Mac, I can just put my media, if I take a bunch of video or do some photo work, I could just dump it to this. This is a sacrificial drive, and I don't have to worry about, I just got a cat's attention with that. I can not work right to the internal soldered on storage that's not replaceable. Apple, we're so green, we make disposable computers. Anyway, but I really, with a modern SSD, I wouldn't worry about it a whole heck of a lot. Just because their controllers are a lot smarter than there used to be. The better the flash, if you go with, there's like QLC, TLC, and SLC, MLC. So like SLC is what enterprise drives use. It's single cell cache basically, and so one update only affects one cell. You've got MLC, where if you update either of the 2 bits, it updates the cell. Triple layer does, if you update one of the 3 bits in the cell, it updates the whole cell, so it wears that cell. The lower you go on that, so if you go towards SLC drives, they're longer lasting because you have fewer operations per cell. Whereas if you increase density, bit density in each cell, your chance of writing to that cell increases, and so it's going to wear out faster just because but it's cheaper to make, so that's why a lot of the cheaper drives use like quad. I tend to stay towards MLC to TLC drives. I stay away, the really cheap ones use the quad, 4 bits per cell kind of thing, and you're basically going to be updating that cell all the time because you've got 4 times the chance of Cat, what are you? He's trying to like climb around on my back. Anyway, I'm just a cat toy at this point. He's still a kitten. Anyway, but
well,
sorry. That's what. Yeah, go ahead. It really depends on the quality of drive, but I don't know if I would, unless you're running an enterprise database or something that's just going to be smacking the crap out of the drive all the time, all day, every day. And I wouldn't worry about it too much. You can see how much data that writes, and then look up your drive's terabyte writes per, like what it's rated at before it fails. Like it should tell you how many terabytes. You can look it up on the manufacturer's website that it'll take before it fails, and you can kind of do some math and figure out. And like some of my workloads, it's like it would be 20 or 30 years before the drive would fail at that, and 20 20 or 30 years, the whole computer's going to be useless. So,
Well,
yeah.
excuse me. Responding to what Dan mentioned, he describes what sounds like an alert with only minutes to respond and have some sort of backup possibility. Now, of course, maybe Dan is backed up. I'm never backed up appropriately. So and I will never figure out a problem within minutes. So if I ever, as a matter of fact, I don't even know how I would recognize the warning, but if I did recognize the warning, I certainly wouldn't be able to do much of anything about it before failure. I'm assuming these things have to be configured in a system that has previously had only a hard drive. So what is the program that anyone has devised to respond to a smart monitor warning expeditiously? I can't even fathom what the components are for that response.
Well, Rusty, you don't want to wait to get a smart monitoring warning before you back up your drive. I mean, you need to be doing that on a routine basis, so that if you do get a smart warning, you don't have to worry about it so much. If it fails, you can just pop another drive in and restore.
Yeah, I mean, there are some warning failure modes that are sudden. It doesn't matter what tool you have set up to monitor it. Right. I mean, there are GUI interfaces for smart mon tools, but it doesn't matter what tool you've got. It could just electrically fail one day when you go to boot it. So I wouldn't wait until you start getting issues.
No.
Yeah, I had that problem. I didn't realize that trim would automatically by default be working, and I accidentally pushed the delete button on a directory, and that's when I learned from an SSD you don't retrieve things.
Nope.
Maybe if you're a genius at it, there are ways you can freeze this SSD immediately and then take it apart with software. But as I looked into it, I saw no. So if you really care about any data, I mean, a lot of it I just don't care about. But if there's anything you care about and you have clumsy fingers, back up.
Right. Well, I've got one I worry about in my system 76. I've got an NVMe M.2 drive is my hard drive. And guess where it's located? It's located under the heatsink.
Ooh.
So I have to take the heatsink off in order to get to the M.2 drive to replace it if I needed to replace it. So that doesn't, huh?
Yeah, it's like they do run hot. I think in a lot of high performance drives nowadays have a heatsink.
Yep. So I have to, so that's the one concern I have. But, for the most part, I think NVMe M.2 drives last quite a while. I haven't ever seen one fail, to be honest.
I've had two.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
It is possible. There's a firmware problem because they do have like a little microcontroller on them. There's firmware issues. There's the Samsung's been plagued with those recently. I mean, they're more reliable than hard drives under certain circumstances. Like a hard drive, if you're moving around, is going to it could head crash. These don't do that, but I think Backblaze does a lot of drive stats. Those are one of these cloud storage places, and they've kind of determined that in a server net in a data center environment, SSDs and hard drives are about the same reliability. So, yeah, you need a backup plan regardless.
Well, for my M.2 drive, in order to preserve that drive as long as I can, I've got 5 SSD drives installed internally in my system, and I parcel out the data from the M.2 drive to one of those 5 drives based on the category of the data. And so it doesn't reside on the M.2 drive very long. It doesn't sit there and just take up space.
It's It's
Got a
crazy.
question.
Go ahead, sorry.
People wanting to use SmartMon tools or GSmart, is there a way to invoke them so they give you a periodic report if you just want to see that everything is functioning normally and the system says it to you?
In my Ubuntu system, if you go to disks, you can ask for a smart drive report.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can generate a report.
Yeah, you can SmartMon B daemon can be configured, I think, to send an email. If you want it to do that way. I'm sure there's got to be a GUI somewhere that'll pop up like a tray notification or something that says, "Hey, your hard drive's about the it's got this problem or something." But yeah,
Well, you know how I figured out that on my Dell system before I moved to the System 76, the way I found out that my drive failed was came from the BIOS. It just popped up when I was booting up. It just popped up. It was a Dell Smart Monitor Assistant came up and said your SSD has failed. That was the warning. So, and at that point, it's too late.
Leander, to circle back to the file system that you use, is that available under GPartEd or?
yeah, BTreeFS is available. I'm experimenting with it. My main workstation is still ext4, but my Linux laptop is using BTreeFS. But it has compression.
Yep.
It's I prefer, for big storage things, I prefer ZFS just out of stability. But BTreeFS is in the Linux kernel natively and does a lot of, or claim, or say, how do I put this? It aspires to do many of the things ZFS does, but doesn't seemingly do a lot of them. But one of the things it does.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, does Butterfuss do the checksumming like ZFS does?
It does. If you've got 2 drives, you can set it up in a RAID 1 and it can automatically repair itself. I would not use any of the parity RAID with BTreeFS, 5 or 6, because those are problematic. It used to have a bunch of odd bugs with the snapshotting and filling. Used to be if like you filled the drive, it would only mount and read only, but I think a lot of those have been squashed. But that's the one that I think Facebook and Google use BTreeFS. They're one of the 2 of the primary developers of it for their data center for the compression, because they're writing terabytes of data a day. A lot of it's just text or whatever, and so they can use the compression to extremely reduce the wear on their solid state drives.
I was going to ask you if it's journaling too.
Yep, it's journaling, checksumming, copy on write. It supports snapshotting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like I said, my
ZFS
NAS,
checksums everything.
Yep, I run ZFS on my file server just because I trust it a whole lot more. But on my laptop, I run BTreeFS again because it's native in the kernel, whereas ZFS is not. So.
Question. There are 2 separate things, and again, as an ignoramus, I noticed that there's BTRFS and there's BETRFS. And then there's apparently BTREEFS. So those are 3 different file systems?
As far as I know.
I think, I don't know, they may be the same different abbreviations for the same one, or a typo or something. BTRFS is the B-tree file system. The third one you mentioned sounds like just a different way of writing that. And the second one sounds like a typo. There's something someone's trying to develop and get into the Linux kernel, but it's not been accepted yet, called Bcache FS. And it's supposed to be BTreeFS, but a lot more stable. But it's not. It's been rejected by the kernel developers. I don't know how many times now, so I don't know. And it's been years, so I don't know if it'll ever make it in. But you can run it as an external patch if you want.
Probably Linus Torvalds.
Yeah, it's hard to get stuff in the kernel. but they do have their blind spots as to what is missing and impacts users compared to what their own goals are. So that's
How do you decide when something like BTRFS or versus EXT4 versus God knows what is appropriate for your usage, pattern? I see that BTRF it mentions in passing that it's combined with a logical volume manager, which I've never used.
So it's yeah. So it basically takes these advanced file systems, and ZFS does the same thing. Basically, roll in LVM, which is on Linux, the Logical Volume Manager 2's capabilities with a file system into one spot. I would say if you don't know, just stick with ext4. It's the default. It's the most stable. You can layer LVM2 underneath that if you want some ability to treat file systems like with snapshots and backups and resizing them later. But um, for a single drive or even like a RAID 1, I would say BTreeFS. My problem with BTreeFS is even these days there's sometimes bugs that crop up in it that are a bit jarring for something that's been around for 11 years. And like recently, it's still, so if you have a RAID 1 and a drive fails, the whole machine won't boot. Which is kind of dumb because if that's the decision the developers make. Because in my mind, a RAID 1, like if you use MD multi-drive, MD admin, or ZFS, it'll let you know that a drive's failed. The machine will keep working, and you just replace the drive, and it'll rebuild it on the fly and keep going. But BTreeFS has got some hiccups like that. But for single disk, for just like a drive on a laptop, I like it. My big concern, not concern, but annoyance is that they have no native support for encryption, and so you have to use Lux or something like that. Instead of like ZFS has got its own native encryption, so you can encrypt
Yeah.
like one pool and not another or something, or one ZDev and not another. You can't in BTreeFS, like you can't encrypt one sub volume and not another. It's all handled by Lux on the backside. So there are places where you might want to disable copy on write for like databases and virtual machines and stuff. But most distros, like I know Fedora, it defaults to BTreeFS now, and if you take the defaults, the directories where they store database files and like varlib and where they store that in virtual machine images are copy on write disabled. So but that's yeah, I don't know. I would say take the default most of the time. Would be my advice. Sorry if that's not too helpful.
And one other thing you're saying, did I hear you say, or is it my hearing, which is not the greatest? There's a file system called DFS.
No, it's
Okay.
there's bcache FS,
Yeah.
like processor cache, CACHEFS, which is not in the kernel yet, but it's being developed by a external developer.
Yeah.
I think OpenSUSE uses BTreeFS too.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a decent GUI with using the snapshots. The really nice thing about it is that you can snapshot before an update or snapshot the whole file system, and if something goes wrong, you just roll back, and it's nice from that perspective.
Mhm.
So the compression aside, like I said, for single drives, I would say it's probably fine. It's just annoying it doesn't have built-in encryption. It's just like, why haven't they? Again, Facebook and Google are developing it, or we're heavy developers, and it's open source, so anyone can contribute to it. But it's those are the heavy people contributing code to it. And I imagine being in a data center, they don't have much use for at-rest encryption for like your laptop. That would be like if your laptop got stolen, the bad guys couldn't just like plug your drive into another machine and copy your data off, right?
Right.
So.
All right, Leander, anything else going on this month?
I got my talk accepted in the Fedora Creative Summit, so I'll be doing that on, let me check the schedule. I need to, the 23rd or something, I think. I'll send an email out to the list if I remember. Work has been kicking my butt. Yeah, it's the 23rd, Tuesday the 23rd. I'll be giving a talk there online. It's an online thing you can watch over, I think they're using Jitsi. I should probably know these things since I'm speaking, so I should probably look into how they want me to do that. Anyway, I've got a few days though, so I'll be doing a talk there. Over the break from work, I started migrating. For years I've had a personal Gitolite server for like code, because it doesn't make sense to me to put everything on GitHub and have them be the dictatorial kind of thing. And especially with Copilot and stuff lately, where they're just like, if you use the free plan, they're basically lifting all of your code to feed their bot. So I've been running Gitolite for about a decade as my personal Git repository manager, but over break I switched over to something called Git T, and I'll paste the link. And it's kind of like a run your own GitHub, and I've set that up. I haven't gotten everything migrated to it yet, but I've been really impressed with it. It's pretty easy to set up and manage. You can do SSH or HTTPS kind of cloning and submitting. People can do pull requests on it. It looks a lot like GitHub, but you host it yourself, so it's nice. But I've been migrating that from Gitolite to that. Was there anything else I'd done? Seems like there was, but I can't remember anymore. Like I said, work has been kicking my butt. They're all after metrics and everything else, so we're having to, produce a lot to not get, you don't want a bad report. So, I work for the state government, but it seems like they've become very more corporate in their methodology of late. But yeah, I really like the Git T for that. It's pretty slim. I have it running on a VM with like 2 CPUs and a gig of RAM. It's a single binary written in Go, so it works really well. It's also really easy to mirror, so I'll probably set up like a local Git T mirror on my desktop or something, so I have like a backup copy of everything. Pretty at hand. And so that's been super helpful. And also the other reason why I wanted to switch is Git T has a built-in contiguous integration service too, so you can like have it like, if you check in code, it can try to build it and send a report and let you know if it failed or not. Gitolite didn't do that. Gitolite was very old school, which is what I liked about it, but it's also limiting. But yeah, that's kind of been my little project over the break. At work, we're still cooking along on a lot of different things, and I don't want to think about all of that lately. I've been trying to. Hopefully this year I'll have some spare time to actually get back into doing personal projects and making videos and doing things. I have just not. When you work 10 hours a day and come home and you're pooped, it's I basically 2023. I feel like I worked away. So I don't want to do that for 2024 again. So I'll have something interesting to talk about.
All right. Thanks, Leander. Pete, what you got going on?
Okay. Last meeting, I think I talked about I was able to get my Mint 21.2 installed and up and running on my tower, my old tower, and get it tweaked so it's doing exactly what I want. And I ran into the issue of making a bootable backup of it because I was using a 1 terabyte spinning hard drive, and all the backup programs I had or was able to get info on, you have to have as big or bigger a backup stick or whatever you're going to use to back it up onto to make a bootable backup. And since I've been on the road for about a month, my machine is sitting down in Florida, and I'll be getting down there in another 2 or 3 days. What was that? Anyway, so I haven't been doing much with Linux because my Linux machine is in Florida and I am not. So that's it.
All right. Thanks, Pete.
Pete, did you figure out a way to get your backup done?
No, I'm still working on that. Somebody recommended Clonezilla, but from what I can determine, you need as large or larger a backup drive to make a bootable image of the existing system.
Well, there's got to be a simpler method. You could DD the drive.
And you can set up then on any size. Yes.
Well, it's just going to copy the data, right?
Well, no, I wanted it to be like a bootable image so that if the hard drive crashes, I can just pull it out and put the backup thing, whatever it is, in and
Yeah, but all you're interested in is the data, right? Your drive's not full.
Actually, I'm interested in the system itself, not the data.
Just the boot system?
Yes.
But those are always going to be available. Dan, I can't hear you. You're muted.
They're available for most people, but on my 5 megabit per second download internet connection, it's almost you got to run it overnight and hope there's no glitch.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say it looks like Pete wants a method where if his drive fails, you can just pop the bootable drive replacement in and go.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
Clonezilla doesn't. I don't think it has compression capability. I could be wrong, but there are packages that do have compression that image your system, so that you could, in effect, put a 1 terabyte image on a smaller drive.
Yeah.
I can't remember any of those, what they're called, but I know they
So
exist.
if most of the terabyte drive is empty, why would you want to image empty space?
Clonezilla.
Well, that was my question, Pete.
Yeah, Clonezilla though looks at the whole drive bit by bit. I think. I don't think it.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Clonezilla
look
will
just
do
at the-
compression if you save to a disk image, not another drive. So if you
Right.
save to it can compress to an image. But if you're doing it drive to drive, yeah, it's got a cloned empty space too because of the.
Mhm.
Again, I think that's the way. Was the way that works.
If you're talking about a bitwise image of a drive that you want to be usable as like a warm/hot backup, I mean, we're really more talking RAID at that point. That's the technology that gives you that, is to just always be copying everything to a second drive. What is this, a desktop or a laptop? What do you want to be doing this on?
Do you remember towers? It's a tower.
Yeah, if you truly want that level of redundancy, you probably just want RAID.
Okay, well, that's a thought. I'll have to think about that. Um, the reason I've got this 1 terabyte drive, I found it at a thrift store. It was $6. I said I'll take a chance, and it's got no bad sectors, and it's
Yeah,
wow.
Pete, there are two packages that just came to mind. If you were running Windows, I could tell you what they are. I think the second one also does Linux, but if you were running Windows, it's called Acronis, and
How do you spell it?
Acronis.
Okay.
That takes an image and it doesn't image the empty space. It only images the used space. The other
Okay.
one that I may do Linux is called Macrium Relief, Macrium, and then it's RELIEF. But both of the last one is a free. You can use a free version of it, but they both cost money. But there's a free
And
version.
doesn't can't you just use DD to just do a bit copy of that entire drive?
Yeah, but it's not bootable. Is it? I don't think it's bootable if you use DD.
I
I
think
don't.
I think a DD copy would be bootable.
I think so. I think I've used it before. I've copied Raspberry Pi, the entire image, and if you name the file .img or something that, and it should boot.
I'll have to look into that.
If you were using MX Linux, you could use MX Snapshot, and you get a boot.
I ran MX a number of years ago, but I'm running Mint. Mint was the favorite for a lot of the guys in the club up until recently.
Steve's favorite operating system, Antix. That's MX and Antix are like brothers.
Are they?
Yeah.
All right. Well, when I get back down to Florida, I will start looking into all these, and maybe I'll have a positive update on the next meeting.
Yeah. One thing about RAID though is you're not going to just be able to use drives that you know, one drive you find and the drive you have. RAID really works best when you are dealing with two completely identical pieces of hardware.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Now that is one place where B3FS does shine. You can slap two different sized drives and all this other, and it'll split it up and do all kinds of crazy stuff where you can use a bunch of random drives for RAID. So that's one place where B3FS really does shine. ZFS is kind of more traditional, where you generally want the same model and everything together. So
yep, I've got a 4 terabyte RAID 1 NAS cloud in my home, and you have to have identical drives in it though. And I'm using NAS drives, so they last a long time, hopefully.
I literally have a box of 2 and 3 terabyte drives in the closet that I have retired. I've been sitting there doing nothing. If anybody needs a hard drive, I can
Pete.
mail one or something.
I've got one. I'm trying to make it work good.
I tested them all before I retired. They all passed the respective manufacturer's drive surface.
Well, if nobody else wants them, Leander, I'll take them from you.
Okay.
Because I've got a two bay system that I use 1 terabyte drives in.
They're 3.5 drives. They're just 3.5. Anything under 4 terabytes is kind of silly to me now. Actually, I may bump that up to 8 terabytes and start retiring a bunch of 4 and 6s that I don't. That's just getting, So it's just, I've got my NAS is a 16 terabyte RAID Z2, which is like RAID 6 and ZFS terms, and it's about 50% full. I want to say, I could check, but yeah, it's about 50% full. So yeah, I'm constantly generating content. Well, I was until work started kicking my butt. But anyway, last year. But it's yeah. So I might be retiring drives, but they're literally sitting in my closet. I wiped them with D-band and then tested them, and like I said,
I just sent you my home address.
okay.
in the
I'll
chat.
try to get a
Dan,
box
would you
and
be willing to?
pack some up.
Dan, would you be willing to share one of those with me?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Make sure you edit that out of the video, Dan.
Well, it doesn't. The chat doesn't get picked up in the video.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
good.
Well, that's good.
It's yeah, it sounds like it might be a good idea for us to have a in-person something or other to do some swaps.
Swap.
And
Swap fest.
I know Leander has something he's been threatening to take for me.
Yeah, I just thought about that this morning when I got up. I was like, I still got that thing. All of my bees absconded again this winter, so
Yeah, I don't know that I have any either. I've not even bothered to look. So
I insulated them and they were there, and then like a couple weeks later they were gone, and I'm like, what in the heck? They had plenty of food, they just left. So they're little prima donna bees. When things aren't perfect, they just kind of leave.
I don't
So,
know why they think they're going to find something else better out there than a
yeah,
box that you've made specifically to their needs. But
yeah,
no one said they're smart.
yeah, that's true. I've got a family member who has a like or it's a merit through marriage family member, but they have a their dad or something has a house up in rural Western Virginia, and they had a cluster of honeybees moving to their wall, and they want me to go remove them, and I'm like, let's let the weather get a little warmer first. So I'll probably have to go up there and do a cutout, so maybe that'll be some free bees. So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
that's a lot of work for bees, so that's not free. I mean, you're essentially doing demolition and, drywall work or whatever.
I made it abundantly clear that I'm good at taking things apart, but I did drywall twice in my life, and I'm not doing it again. So I'll come in, I'll take the wall out, I'll take the bees, clean it up as good as I can, and then the rest is on him. So yeah,
Bee removal is good work for, those who really are more interested in construction than bees.
yeah. It's better than some people, they get a bee colony that moves in their siding or whatever, and they just hit them with the bug spray.
Yeah.
That's bad. But then
Then you have rats because the honey's still there.
Yep, rats and cockroaches and all sorts of other stuff moves in behind it. Yep. So, yeah. So I might, but yeah, I did. It'd be good to have something in person. Maybe once the weather gets a little bit less wintry. So.
Then you got the bee be gone spray.
I've been using actually hive lures, and I haven't had any success with them. The Swarm Commander, the lemongrass, and because I had the idea that if I put a box out in a tree somewhere and just put some lure in it, so people are like, oh yeah, you can just catch and no, but maybe I don't know what it is around here.
Have
I just
you?
don't like it.
We haven't had a lot of luck with swarm capture. We did get one the last year, I think it was. I think it has more to do with position and shape of the box. Someone did a really good, who is that? Oh, I can't remember. He's a guy from up in New York or something, somewhere New England maybe, did a thing on it at the state conference. And basically it was all about swarm lures. A really famous guy. I can't remember his name though. And they apparently like certain shape boxes, certain size boxes, aimed certain direction, certain size, certain elevations off the ground, and you have a lot better luck with those. Of course, a lot of those things rely on whether you can accomplish those things easily.
I've seen some pre-made kind of, you can just order them offline, pre-made swarm boxes, and I thought about, and I mean, I guess they're probably the right size and shape and everything, and they're smaller, so they're easier to get up in a tree than like a actual, nuke or something like that. So I was thinking about getting those because I'm kind of tired of paying a few $100s for bees and then having them decide to leave. So.
Yeah, I think if we lose all our bees, which has not happened in a while, but if it were to happen, I think we'll wait for bees to find us instead of just buying back into it. I'm going to cut myself and you off on this because we're
Yeah.
running out of time and we need to talk. Wait, is Rusty even here? Oh, he's there. Okay. Rusty, what you got going on?
Well, I've got a little question about what I believe was what's the name of the little box that for internet access that some people have in place of a regular computer?
NUC?
No. The Pi.
Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, the Pi computer. I don't have one of those, but a friend had one set up that came pre-configured. As I understand it, it came with Mint installed on it as an internet box, if I have the story correct. But it mysteriously quit having internet access, and the only two things that I did on a visit to where was I asked the question, did he have internet access? I mean, did he have network access first? Because he was, everyone else on a router box in the household, 2 or 3 other laptops had access to that router. And sure enough, he had both wired access to the network and also wireless access. So he was receiving a DHCP network assignment through both hardware systems. So then I couldn't understand why he, his browser simply was reporting, no access to internet. And I ran the command sudo ufw status verbose, and it only gave a small amount of information saying that yes, UFW was active, but that there was, I've forgotten the actual text of the message, but it was something to the effect that I guess the wide area network or the internet portion was not, was disabled. And I figured, well, that's fine. It should be disabled if someone sent this machine out ready to plug into a router, because the router is handling the wide area network and there would be no firewall necessary. So that's the limit of my, I didn't really know where to go. So my question to the group is, in what I understand was a pre-configured, fairly recent Mint installation, a year or so old, what are the daemons or programs that would throttle this thing, that would turn its wide area network access off, which is something that you could do with a firewall, but I had no evidence that a firewall was interfering with internet access, and I had no evidence that it was not getting network assignments, and I don't know what program might be filtering out or how would I say, restricting the particular IP address being assigned by a local router. And of course, further down the line, the router has a modem, and the modem is some sort of purchase thing from a cable provision. So I'm just kind of clueless to know where to be looking. What is
Question,
how would you,
Rusty?
yeah.
He could ping the router itself from
yes.
from
Yeah,
that. Okay, so you could ping within the network. He just can't get out. Did you say that he had UFW on the Raspberry Pi?
Yeah, the status UFW was running, and that gets to another question that I have. like I'm not running UFW a firewall on my main my regular Kubuntu, which is fairly recent, and my understanding is that an ordinary router comes pre-configured to limit inbound to an outbound to the requirement that it be initiated.
Are you sure his UFW on the Raspberry Pi was simply not blocking the Raspberry Pi from sending anything out?
Well, the verbose report did not, I cannot really recall exactly, but the report was very simple, simply saying UFW is enabled, but was disabled for the wired, for the internet world, the wide area network. And that made sense to me. I figured, well, why, I'm not sure. All I know is there was nothing interfering with pinging within the network between the other computers. You could ping the other computers. And as I recall, I pinged the traditional what they call the portal 192.168.1.1, and that was pingable. I didn't get into visiting the router that was in charge, the router in charge of assigning DHCP. I didn't, I didn't get into any named, I didn't get into the question of whether any particular IP addresses were restricted.
Well, Rusty, I got
after
something to
assignment.
say. So one thing I
Yeah.
heard you say that was problematic that I could see, it sounded like, your router has got a wired side and it's got a wireless side as well. And you
Yes.
DHCP servers handing out IP addresses. And it sounded like you were saying that both of those were turned on at the same time. So theoretically, you've got two different networks, a wired and a wireless network, and you've got IP addresses being handed out on both networks simultaneously.
Yes.
Why does he have both of those activated?
Yeah, I know. I actually did purposely unplug the wired to remove. I tried it both with pure wireless and with pure wired, and there was no internet access. So yeah, I've had your experience of confusion when you have two IP addresses assigned.
Is DNS?
Rusty, let me ask you a couple of things that could cause this. So are you using the Wi-Fi password for your router? I mean, are you able to log into the get an IP address assigned from the router?
Yes. The wireless, the password protected wireless IP address was being assigned, and it's just that it was not. Some demon, some program somewhere appeared to be restricting internet access for that machine.
Do you have a DNS or DNS servers assigned? Because if you don't have DNS, you're not going to be able to get out either.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was thinking. It sounds like your DNS isn't configured.
Yeah, but
Misconfigured.
isn't that at the router level? He's got other computers that are getting out.
It should be. It can be, but you can also configure a machine to say DHCP with manual DNS, and so maybe the Pi just isn't assigning DNS servers off the DHCP to itself.
Yeah.
I would run ifconfig and just see what's going on with that device.
If you can ping 8.8.8.8, like one of the Google DNS servers or something, I would then say that your DNS configuration is not right, because it's that would be that you're getting out, but you know, if you try to go online, nothing with DNS is going to work.
The other thing that comes to
But
mind is the router has said this device can't have access to the internet.
yeah, most routers have a configuration. I didn't get into visiting his router to look at configuration, but as I recall, most routers have a parameter for the wide area network that is dictated by the router. And it should be good, you would think, if someone is if the router is in charge of wired area network. And that's why I mentioned that the UFW status seemed to indicate that UFW, I don't know what it was doing for the program to be on or enabled, but there was a separate line that indicated that it was not active for purposes of wide area network. And
As long as that was saying it was not active rather than saying it was blocking wide area.
yeah, there was no message that said blocking. It just sounded like that was considered to be the duty of some other network manager downstream, which of course is the router with DHCP.
And UFW, the router itself may also have a firewall.
Yeah, and the mystery of it is that it just occurred for this one machine that was about 1.5 years old, running Mint, that came pre-configured. And I didn't get into whether or not there's some update that might need to occur for the system. But I can't imagine what daemon would be operating that would sort of shut down pure internet access just for one machine on a network.
There's another simple test you could do. Since the operating system is on an SD card on a Raspberry Pi, you could just put another one on and test that. It's like running live. And if the other one, you know, after it gets connected to the network and gets a DHCP, you know, gets an address from the router, if that one connects to the internet fine, then there was indeed some software peculiarity about the Mint install.
Okay, give me the logic of that again. You're saying,
well, it's
okay,
easy to slip in another SD card. And Debian, for example, that this was the standard. There was a Raspbian, which was a Debian version for Raspberry Pi, which is a version. If you install that on an SD card, and then use that SD card in the Raspberry Pi instead of the one that's there now, then you could just basically launch it as a Raspbian Raspberry Pi and see if after you connect it to the router and it gets gets accepted by the router, that it then can connect to the internet.
Yeah, that does address the question of what is a pre-configured daemon that is built into the boot and built into the startup routines.
If you got if you have a misconfigured DNS, you won't be able to ping like google.com, but you might be able to ping an IP address associated with google.com.
Yeah.
You know, that's
yeah.
I will definitely try that. See if it can ping. Can it ping into the WAN? Can it ping to the outside world to a known address?
Yeah.
Known IP, known URL.
Yeah. Well, IP address is a great idea. You could presumably do that through the browser on the Raspberry Pi also.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We'll try that. That would be the.
I think in network troubleshooting, you're moving too quick to the theories, and all the data collection that people are suggesting is the way to go. I basically start with the lowest level possible. Basically is TCP stuff working? Do I have an IP address? is it on the adapter that I expect it to be on? Do I have a route, a default gateway? Then can I ping myself? You know, do I have some weird TCP problem where I can't even ping localhost? Can I ping my IP address? Can I ping my gateway? Then can I ping something like 8.8.8.8, as Leander said? Then if not, like, well, what can I ping? What can I trace to? So run a trace route to see what I can get out to. Then once you've established, okay, well, it's not TCP IP, all that stuff is pinging, then you move up to protocols. Well, we need DNS to work. So can I ping google.com? Well, if I can ping google.com, DNS seems to be working. Then you proceed to browser-oriented things, HTTP-oriented things. Can you, like, from the command line, can you run like curl or wget? Does that work? And can you get to some very basic site via HTTP? Then it's like, well, if that doesn't work, maybe you're looking at something misconfigured in a browser, like a proxy or something like that. So as long as you start from the bottom up, you will get to your answer very quickly.
You definitely
Yeah,
don't want
thank you.
two DHCP servers running simultaneously, like one on the router,
Yes.
one on the PI, because you got collision possibilities there too.
Well, I think I did sort of do the bottom end with ifconfig and pinging in the network and unplugging the wired and confirming that I only had one DHCP running. But yeah, I'm hungry to try out that fundamental question: can I reach an outside server by its bare IP address rather than through a name? So thank you for those hints. I'm going to contact this friend and get him to get into the console a little bit. Nothing much else to report for my constantly procrastinated grunt work projects, and it's winter time, so it's time to start doing taxes, and I've got all of these computer things that I want to get done, which consist of, I'm still trying to find out what combination of cloud compare for LiDAR data points and a Blender for processing meshes, or SketchUp for processing face-defined, computer models. And in all of this, I'll have to add that I've had the interesting experience of trying Bard Google as a sort of as a hand-holding companion while trying to sort out, commands and trying to locate where the buttons are in the widgets for different software like Blender. And I'll get in there, and I find Bard to be really helpful in the fact that it's dispassionate, it's always available, it responds very quickly, but it doesn't really, it's not like a human who would have their antenna extended for all of the possible explanations. Like if you can't find, I went through the experience with Blender of asking, well, where is the readout of the XY coordinates of the 3D cursor that you're moving around? And it kept giving me different places to look in the menu tree and on the side toolbars in different places. I kept reporting, no, it's not there. I'm using 2.81 version. Are you sure that this, send me, was asking Bard, will you just send me an image of the button, so maybe to help me find it. And finally concluded, I finally told Bard, well, you haven't been able to tell me where this 3D cursor coordinates are. What's wrong? And finally, Bard confessed, well, or at least it concocted the claim that, well, Blender doesn't really have a display of the XY Z coordinates of the 3D cursor. But I'll show you this Python script that can read it out, which I which I used, and I can tell you it is just it ranges from being ridiculous to being impressive to interact with this semi-intelligent outfit. It makes me wonder how many people Google has actually assigned to babysit this software. You know, like 24/7. I just picture Google has to have manpower that's actually sort of running around and joining into the intelligent responses of the software, because I can't picture that they can milk the maximum sort of learning improvement out of the event if they don't have some humans who are sort of diving into a given interaction. I did actually ask Bard, I said, I've been asking questions for about 10 days now. Do you know what date you can recall some of my previous questions? And Bard responded, we don't keep, you know, it was paraphrased, we don't keep a full log, but I showed the current conversation, and it was something like about 18 hours old. It was still in the same day, at least. The clock had not turned over, even though I was doing a lot of after midnight work. So anyway, I just wanted to share that. It's just fascinating to me how much there's a lot of helpful stuff that comes from AI, but it's not as credible as, it's nowhere near as credible as an experienced human who if you had one available, can just cut through the kinds of questions that you're posing. I think what the AI gives you a lot of thought-provoking response, some of which is red herring, you know, just off of the path that you need to be on. So that's about what I've been up to.
All right. I personally know nothing about the way folks operate their AIs, and yeah, and I'm also distracted because I'm really wondering why Pete is completely purple.
Yeah, me too. Purple Pete.
I would assume anything like this where it's new software and an unpredictable software, it must have some level of babysitting, just so it doesn't run completely off the rails like some previous AI projects have.
Brent,
Yeah, I sort of feel like I'm in Alice in Wonderland, and you're wanting to know who is behind the curtain for this omniscient.
Two different stories.
Yeah. And I picture if it's Google, and if they want to go anywhere, there has to be an army of you know, at least a few dozen. You know, well, all over the world in different languages, there has to be a human army backing up and trying to learn from this experience.
Through the looking glass.
I think to some extent you're right. If something operates in a bunch of languages, it's probably only the most common, the most used that get the same level of attention. I think that's, you know, one of the privileges we have is speaking the lingua franca, and everything is tailored to our needs. as English speakers. I think there's probably some level of support for, Hindi, Arabic, Mandarin, Spanish, the things that have a large number of speakers. But if you're getting further down the list, it's probably not going to get any level of specific human attention, just because there's not, it's just not going to have the return on
Rusty,
investment.
you should ask the Bard to fix your friend's Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, I'm taking what we have discussed. I may actually run that by to see what they will recommend. And maybe they will repeat exactly what Brent said, start at the low level, and I may
Most
end
likely.
up getting about, 5
Where do
or
you
6
think Brent
screens
got it from?
full of information.
All right. Well, we're well past the hour. So I say, as always, I'm not going to kick anybody out of the room, but I myself will depart. I didn't really say anything specific other than replying to folks, but I don't really have anything going on in Linux. I've been very busy on my computer, but for work stuff, which is sadly mostly in the Windows ecosystem. So, but I'll let y'all go and see you next month.
Okay. See you next month.
Alright.
I'm going to stop the live stream, guys.
Thanks,
I got to
Brent.
go too.
Thanks.
Thanks, Brett.
Thanks, Brent. Thanks.
Bye, you all.